A green caterpillar hunched over a cluster of small white cocoons, and when the predator leans in, it strikes, a violent swing of the head, then another, driving the attacker back. It is guarding them. It will die guarding them. And here is the part that should stop you cold. Those cocoons are not its children. They are the young of the wasp that ate it from the inside. The wasp whose larvae chewed out through its skin days ago. It survived that. And the first thing it did with the life it had left was stand watch over the things that gutted it. This is a Glyptapanteles wasp, a small parasitoid, one undescribed species studied on a single host in Brazil, the caterpillar of a geometrid moth called Thyrinteina leucocerae, which feeds on the leaves of guava and eucalyptus. Popular science calls what you are watching a zombie bodyguard. Hold that word loosely. Zombie is a metaphor here, shorthand for an altered, induced defensive behavior. Not a proven takeover of a mind. Because when you look closely at how this happens, the honest answer is that no one fully knows. What is documented is stranger for being uncertain. It begins before the caterpillar is even worth noticing. An adult female wasp finds a very young larva, first or second instar, barely a thread of green, and injects her eggs. Dissect that caterpillar in the moment after, and researchers found up to about 80 eggs packed inside a single host. Up to. In one study. Treat that 80 as a ceiling, not a promise. Not every caterpillar, not a typical count, an upper bound from one careful look. But sit with the image anyway. A creature the size of a comma, carrying dozens of passengers it cannot feel and cannot expel. And nothing appears to be wrong. That is the quiet horror of the middle chapter. The larvae grow inside the still living, still feeding caterpillar, drawing on its internal fluids and tissues. The caterpillar keeps eating, it keeps growing, molting up through its fourth and fifth instar, fattening on leaves, outwardly ordinary. A green thing on a green leaf, doing what green things do. It is not sick, it is not slow, it is a walking larder that does not know it has been set. Everything it consumes, it is in part consuming for them. Then the timer runs out. When the larvae are mature, up to around 80 of them, they chew their way out through the caterpillar's skin. They emerge in a mass through the cuticle and gather on the plant, right beside the body they came from. And each one spins itself a cocoon, a tight white cluster, inches from their former host. And the caterpillar does not die. That is what refuses to make sense. It has just been torn open from the inside by dozens of larvae, and it survives the exit. It remains alive, and within one day of the larvae leaving, something in it changes. In the study, 15 of 17 parasitized caterpillars, about 88%, stopped feeding and stopped moving across the plant. Not all of them. 15 of 17, a small sample, and you should hold the number exactly that honestly. But the contrast was stark. Unparasitized caterpillars, the controls, kept feeding and wandering as normal. The parasitized ones went still. They stayed where the cocoons were, as if the only task left was to stand over them. Now watch what happens when something approaches. Researchers introduced a predator, a stink bug, Sepucius cincticeps, the kind of thing that would happily drain a row of soft white cocoons. And the guarding caterpillar attacked. 17 of 19 parasitized caterpillars lashed out with those repeated. Violent head swings, knocking the predator back from the brood. Of 20 unparasitized caterpillars, only one showed anything like it, 1 in 20. The ordinary caterpillar, disturbed, mostly does nothing. The parasitized one becomes a flail. And it worked. When a guard was present, the stink bug managed to reach the cocoons in only about 35% of its attempts. 2 out of 3 times, the thing that came to eat the wasp's young was beaten off by the corpse to be it grew inside of. And this is where you have to be careful. Because the caterpillar is not brave, it is not loyal, it does not decide to guard, does not choose the cocoons, does not want to protect them, and cannot know what they are. There is no intent in it. What you are seeing is an induced behavior, a physiological state, a reflex-like defense switched on in a simple animal, not a choice. Assigning it courage is the same mistake as calling it a zombie, a story we drape over a mechanism we have not actually seen. Does the guarding matter? In the field, yes, and only to one party. Having a caterpillar standing guard roughly halved the death rate of the wasp pupae. When researchers removed the guard, pupal mortality increased about twofold, a statistically solid effect in that one field study. Twice as likely to die with no bodyguard over them. That is the whole return on this grotesque arrangement, and every cent of it is paid to the wasp. The caterpillar gains nothing. It does not save its own offspring. These were never its offspring. It does not buy itself another season. It fights, it holds the line, and its reward is to have been useful to the thing that consumed it. Because the caterpillar does die. Not during the guarding, this is important, and easy to get wrong. It is alive the entire time it stands watch. It dies only afterward, soon after the adult wasps cut their way out of the cocoons and fly off, roughly 6 to 7 days after the larvae first aggressed. It guards a brood it will never outlive. It holds its post until the very things it protected have grown, emerged, and abandoned it, and then, its work done for a family that was never its own, it finally stops. So how does the wasp flip the switch? Here is the honest edge of the map, the biggest hedge of the whole file, and the channel will not cross it. No one has demonstrated the mechanism. What the researchers did find is an observation when they dissected guarding caterpillars 3 to 4 days after the larvae had left. 1 or 2 larvae were still inside. Not all had gone. And in their own careful words, they wrote that they hypothesized that these parasitoid larvae are responsible for the changes in host behavior. A hypothesis, not a finding. It is tempting. Irresistible, even, to say those 1 or 2 stayed behind to pilot the body, to sacrifice themselves at the controls. Resist it. That causal, intentional story is exactly what has not been shown. The larvae are present, that is fact. That their presence causes the guarding is a guess. And it is a contested guess. A more recent proposal suggests the caterpillar's post-egress state may resemble something closer to a stress-induced, sleep-like quiescence, reduced feeding, reduced movement, a lowered metabolism, yet still capable of thrashing when disturbed. That too is a proposal, not a verdict. Set it beside the stay-behind larvae idea, and what you have is an open question, actively debated, genuinely unresolved. No mind control chemical has been proven. No virus has been shown to rewire this brain. Anyone who tells you exactly how the caterpillar is turned is telling you a story the science has not finished writing. Let me bring this home with the line between what is known and what is not. Known, the eggs, up to around 80. The larvae, growing inside a living, feeding host. The mass exit through the skin and the host surviving it. The stillness in about 88%, the head swinging defense in 17 of 19 against 1 in 20 controls. The roughly halved pupal death rate, the death 6 to 7 days out after the adults are gone. All of it from a single study, on 1 wasp, 1 host, with modest samples, real, but not a law of nature. Not known how any of it is done. That mechanism is a hypothesis wearing the costume of certainty, and we are taking the costume off. And if you are wondering whether anything here reaches you, it does not. Plainly, this wasp has nothing to do with you. Glyptapanteles targets only moth and butterfly caterpillars. It cannot parasitize, cannot control, cannot harm a human, a pet, or any animal with a backbone. There is no medical angle. The only real connection to our world is a quietly useful one. parasitoid wasps like this are natural enemies of leaf-eating caterpillars, and the studied host is a guava and eucalyptus pest, which makes wasps like these a kind of free pest control for a farm. Fascination, not fear. If files like this one are why you're here, the true crime autopsies of the creatures that turn other bodies into machinery, then subscribe. Because every episode, we open another file on the creatures that hijack other lives to build their own. Because tonight, you watched one victim guard one small cluster of killers. But some hijackers are not content with a single body. Somewhere out there is a parasite that does not take one victim, it rewrites a whole society. Thousands of bodies moving to a will that is not their own, an entire order turned against itself from the inside. The file is never closed. Something is always waiting. And next time, we open it. Host or hijacker, no one is safe.